Full disclosure time. Blue is my favorite color in Magic. Azorius is my favorite guild, and I love playing a good control deck that slowly wears down my opponents into submission. However, today I'll not be talking about a commander deck like that. Today I'm talking about the commander deck you send to pulverize blue players like me. And the commander today comes you straight from the nightmares of every blue player. Ruric Thar the Unbowed, and I'll be converting to a Gruul Stompy player today for this video. Ruric Thar is a monster. 6/6 vigilance and reach makes him great on defense, and he must attack each turn if able. But none of that is why every blue player fears him. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Ruric Thar deals 6 damage to that player. Ruric Thar hates sorceries, instants, artifacts, enchantments, and every annoying card that tries to avoid combat. He just wants everyone to play fair creature magic. I'd say roughly a third to 40% of all commander decks physically cannot function with this guy in play. And that brings me to his real purpose in this deck. You see, everyone hates Ruric Thar, and he is quite possibly the biggest lightning rod for removal in the game. However, our opponents only have a finite amount of removal, and every bit of it they use on Ruric Thar, they cannot use on another big creature in this Gruul Stompy deck. Ruric Thar can always be recast whenever we feel the urge to further irritate our opponents, because this deck's specialty is mana generation. Ruric Thar's ability is symmetrical, and will also punish us for playing non-creature spells. So this deck consists of 35 lands, 15 non-creature spells, and 50 creatures. The deck runs no instants whatsoever, and only a single sorcery. Primal Surge. Primal Surge. Primal Surge is 10 mana and reads, exile a top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you do, repeat this process. Now, us Gruul players prefer to leave math to blockers, but I think if there are no other non-permanent cards in this deck, then there's a 100% chance of Primal Surge putting the entire deck onto the battlefield, winning us the game on the spot through several haste enablers. But beware of cards like Guardian Project, Garruk's Uprising, or Kenra's Transformation, all of which would backfire in the most embarrassing way after Primal Surge resolves. So be careful of what you put in the deck. Now, there are ways to tutor for Primal Surge, but I don't believe that's the Gruul way. The Gruul way just leaves it to the heart of the cards and instead focuses on dealing as much damage as possible by playing the biggest and baddest creatures in the game. So let's get into the deck strategy. After all, we Gruul players have big brain. We will need a foolproof plan to crush our enemies. Step 1. Play a little creature or another way to ramp. Step 2. Play a big creature. And finally, Step 3. Play an even bigger creature. We will repeat steps 2 and 3 until our opponents are trampled to death. This plan is simple yet effective. The key is pressure. Constant, never-ending pressure. Make your opponents have an answer to your new threat every turn. You should always be looking to attack and push damage. Don't give your opponents time to get comfortable. Keep up the pressure and keep playing threats. Trust me, even the best control decks will run out of removal if you force them to have an answer every turn by constantly playing big creature after big creature after big creature. But first, let's go over the cards that will help us ramp up to the big threats. Soul Ring and Emerald Medallion are non-creature ramp cards that are too good to pass up. Shadow in the Warp is the last non-creature ramp card in the deck. It reduces our first creature spell by 2 mana, and it furthers the theme of hating on non-creature spells. For creature ramp, the 1-mana Elf Trio is here, with Llanowar Elves, Fyndhorn Elves, and Elvish Mystic. Llanowar Tribe is all 3 of these cards rolled into one. Arbor Elf can tap to untap a forest, and Sakura Tribe Elder can search our library for that forest or a mountain. Finishing off the 2-mana ramp, there's Goblin and Okeomancer, which reduces the cost of all of our spells, while Magus of the Library can alternatively be used for card draw if we have exactly 7 cards in hand, which I assure you is much easier to achieve than you think. I mean, this card's counterpart is strong enough to be banned in Commander. Often, this draw ability can be played right after or right before our draw step, effectively doubling our draws for each turn, while still putting ramp on the board. The best 2-mana ramp card in the deck, however, is Fanatic of Rhonas, who can tap for 4 mana if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, which will pretty much be every turn past turn 2. Fanatic also has Eternalize, which allows him to come back from the graveyard to fulfill his own power 4 requirement. Zavala, Heart of the Wilds, is the best 3-mana creature in the deck because her ability may draw us cards for having the biggest creature, and for 1 green, she taps to add mana equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. Sumberwald Sage taps for free mana only to cast spells that Ruric Thar would approve of. Salusium Godspeaker taps to add a green for each big creature in our hand. Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia, taps for 2 mana and untaps whenever we play a creature of power 5 or greater. Shaman of Forgotten Ways also taps for 2 mana, but he also has a Biorhythm type effect that can catch opponents off guard and deal a ton of damage, seemingly out of nowhere. Goreclaw, Titan of Kalsisma, reduces the cost of our big creatures and gives trample to other big creatures when she attacks. Some other useful low-cost cards in this deck include Collector Oof, who really hates on artifact players. Reclamation Sage is good removal for artifacts and enchantments. For creature removal, the deck runs Lignify to turn a pesky creature into a 0/4 treefolk. Song of the Dryads can hit any annoying permanent and turn it into a forest. Beast Whisperer and Magus of the Wheel both draw cards, which is essential for keeping up with the mana acceleration. After all, mana ramp doesn't mean anything if you run out of cards to spend mana on. One of the best draw engines in the deck is Heartwood Storyteller. This creature punishes a player for casting a non-creature spell by having each of that player's opponents draw a card. For tutors, the deck runs Fauna Shaman and Fierce Empath, who can both tutor the best creature for a given situation right to our hand. But why settle for tutoring to hand when you can tutor creatures directly into play? Invasion of Ikoria is an X-cost battle that puts a creature with mana value X'd from our deck right into play. On the battle's backside is Zillaphora, Apex of Ikoria, who allows attacking creatures to assign combat damage as though they weren't blocked, basically making our attacks undefendable. Magus of the Order also tutors a creature into play, but only pays 1 green mana and a willing sacrifice of another green creature to do so. Other methods for cheating creatures into play without paying for them include Monstrous Vortex and Court of Bounty. The Vortex gives our creature spells with power 5 or greater discover equal to their power. This basically attaches a free spell to each of our big creatures, and that free spell could even be another big creature to trigger the Vortex again. Court of Bounty makes us the Monarch, and if we are still the Monarch at our upkeep, we can put a creature into play for free. However, if our crown gets stolen, we could still put an extra land into play. However, this deck's best method for cheating creatures into play is the 2-mana enchantment called Oath of Druids. This is a card I'm shocked barely sees playing Commander, but I suspect this is because it might be a little too wordy for you Gruul players, so I'll try and keep it simple with 3 easy steps to follow. First, at each player's upkeep, that player can point to any opponent who controls more creatures than they do. Second, that player reveals cards from the top of their deck until they reveal a creature card. And lastly, the player puts that creature into play and everything else revealed this way into their graveyard. This enchantment technically provides equal benefit to everyone, so long as everyone has a deck full of powerful creatures they want to cheat into play. The remaining non-creature cards in this deck include Vivian's Arcbow, which is very useful when we're reduced to top decking. Greater Good and Garruk Primal Hunter help prevent us from getting to that point by drawing us a lot of cards if we control a large creature. Thickest in the Thicket doubles the size of our largest creature when it enters and draws us 2 cards at each of our end steps if we control the biggest creature. Oh, and we can't have a Gruul Stompy deck without Rhythm of the Wild, giving us haste while vexing blue players. I've broken up the big creatures in this deck into 3 groups. Support creatures that need setup and are usually best when combined with other big creatures, monstrous creatures that are massive threats to our opponents on their own or have powerful defensive abilities, and finally, the 5 biggest and baddest creatures in the deck, any one of which can completely take over the game. But for now, let's start with those in the support tier. And we begin with a 1/1, Mana Gorger Hydra. Those of you who have played against this card in Commander before know that if you look away for 1 minute and then look back, it suddenly goes from a 1/1 to a 15/15 trample attacking you. To help our creatures attack quickly, there's Enduring Courage and Xenagos God of Revels. Both of these cards grant haste and powerful buffs to creatures. Enduring Courage gives creatures +2 attack while Xenagos doubles a creature's power every combat. Anzrag, the Quake Mole, and Morog, Fury of a Colm, both grant extra combats and can go crazy with Primal Surge. Speaking of Primal Surge, Pyrewood Gearhulk prevents our Primal Surge turn from being blown out by a fog. The Gearhulk even creates a weakness into Fairy's Protection, the strongest fog in Commander. Since damage can't be prevented, simply take out that player with Commander damage from Ruric Thar, with 20 extra combats from either Anzag or Morog. The Gearhulk is also a 7/7 Vigilance Menace, for good measure. Regal Behemoth is a 5/5 trample that makes us the Monarch and doubles our mana if we stay the Monarch. Kolaga and Yadaro have this deck's only instant speed interaction. For 4 mana, this card can be discarded to destroy an artifact or enchantment. When played as a creature, they are a 7/7 that can either gain trample and haste for a turn, or fight another target creature. And lastly, there's Oger Kesslem Deepest Growth. A 6/5 with trample, and whenever this god deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of our deck and put a creature and or land card from among them into play. Oger also becomes a land when he dies. Now on to the main group of monsters. The cheapest creature in this tier at 5 mana is Elder Gargoyf, a 6/6 Vigilance Reach Trample with whenever this beast attacks or blocks, choose one, make a free beast, gain 3 life, or draw a card. This creature is a 1-card value engine with impressive stats. At 6 mana, there's Itali Primal Storm, who on attack casts the top card of each player's library. Then there's another dinosaur, Carnage Tyrant, a 7/6 with trample, hexproof, and can't be countered. He's just a pest in general for control decks to deal with. Hydra Omnivore is an 8/8 that damages all of your opponents at once, so you might as well swing him at the weakest player. Kolaga Titanate fights a creature when it enters, and when it attacks, it destroys an artifact or enchantment. At 7 mana, there's Giant Adaphage and Zolpendril Hunger Dominus. The Adaphage creates a token copy of itself whenever it deals damage to an opponent, and that token copy can create another token copy, which will create another copy, and then another, and so on. So Pendril doubles the stats of all of our creatures each combat, even on our opponent's turns, and it can gain indestructible by sacrificing 2 other creatures. At 8 mana, we have Terastodon, who is basically 3 Beastofins attached to a 9/9 body, except the elephant cannot destroy other creatures. For defense, there's Hornet Queen, who is 5 flying Death Touch creatures rolled into 1. Spearbreaker Behemoth and Stonehoof Chieftain are both indestructible threats that give our other creatures indestructible. Vigor isn't indestructible, but he takes the phrase, "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger," very literally. Instead of taking damage, our creatures will instead get that many +1/+1 counters put on them. However, Vigor himself does not have this ability. And now we're on to the big 5 in this deck. Starting off, we have the most expensive creature in this deck at 10 mana, Apex Devastator. Apex Devastator is just a vanilla 10/10 when he enters, but when he's cast, he has Cascade, 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 and 1 more instance of Cascade for good measure. This is effectively an instant board state on a single card. Devastator is quite possibly the perfect card to play after a board wipe in this deck, due to the sheer value of its Cascade triggers. At 4th best, we have another creature that likes to cast spells for free. It's Itali Primal Hunger. When the 7 mana Spinosaurus enters play, it casts a spell from each player's deck, and unlike the 6 mana version, this Itali cannot whiff by hitting lands. After Itali helps himself to your opponent's cards, he could transform into Itali Primal Sickness and be capable of eliminating players in a single attack with poison counters. Despite all of Itali's broken and pushed abilities, he is still only the 4th best creature in the deck. In 3rd, we have an even larger dinosaur, an Apex Altasaur, a 10/10 with an ETB and Enrage trigger that triggers whenever the Altasaur takes damage. This trigger reads, whenever this creature takes damage, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. When the Altasaur fights, it will likely take damage, which will trigger its Enrage ability again and cause it to start another fight with a new creature. The Altasaur is effectively this deck's only board wipe because it can fight many creatures in a row. Sure, this is a powerful ability that can retrigger itself, as long as it doesn't take, when the Apex Altasaur enters play, it fights a creature, effectively starting the chain reaction. When it's combined with Spearbreaker Behemoth is when it truly gets out of hand. Apex Altasaur is effectively this deck's panic button, which is why it is often what I tutor for. In 2nd place, we have Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. Vorinclex was recently released from the Game Changer list because... reasons? Well, it definitely wasn't for good behavior, because for 8 mana, he doubles your lands while having your opponent's. When you tap a land for mana, you add 1 additional mana that land could produce. If an opponent taps a land while Vorinclex is in play, that land won't untap during their next untap step. If you can manage to get this guy out early, the game is practically over unless everyone teams up on you. This card is so despicably evil, I'm officially bestowing it upon Vorinclex the honor of being an unofficial blue card. Now, the scariest and most powerful creature, and also the alternate commander for this deck, is Cloth Unrivaled Ancient. Cloth is number 1 simply because he makes a stupid amount of mana. At his floor, he gives you 4 mana back to cast spells. At his ceiling, he gives you up to 30 to 40 mana. Combined with any sort of card draw, and the game is over. You cast every card you touch and vote far ahead of any of your opponents. Cloth will threaten to win the game every single turn if he's not immediately answered. And that is why he is the most dangerous creature in the deck. Let's wrap things up with lands, 35 in total. Myriad Landscape, Temple of the False God, and Blighted Woodland help with ramp. Rogue's Passage and Kessig Wolf Run are great for pushing through damage. Arena of Glory can be exerted to give a creature haste. Tyrite Sanctum can turn Ruric Thar or any of our other legendary creatures into an indestructible god. All blue players will tremble in fear of their god, Ruric Thar. For dual lands, there's Command Tower, Wooded Foothills, Stomping Ground, Spire Garden, Cinderglade, Rootbound Crag, Thorn Spire Verge, Rockfall Vale, Cragtown Pathway, Game Trail, Grove of the Burn Willows, Carpulson Forest, Gruul Turf, Sheltered Thicket, and Temple of Abandon. 5 mountains and 8 forests finish off this primarily green deck. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe, and as always, you can find the full deck list in the description.